Okay, folks online and folks in the room here, welcome to our August meeting. So I will turn my computer a little bit here, and yeah, I can also. I'll be kind of small, I think, if that's okay. Yeah. Hello to everybody in the room. Hey. See you brought us up again. That's great. Yeah. Great to see you there. I didn't check in the parking lot. Did you bring your Mustang Mach-E again? We had another member who was attempting that we bring Volkswagen ID4. So we have no about that, but it's not. Said he was going to come online. So we're getting our speakers hooked up right now. So real excited tonight. Can you guys online hear me when I'm this far away from the microphone?
No, we can barely hear you, Deb.
Yeah, it's kind of distorted.
Okay, well, I'll just get closer to my computer then. So we're going to have the two folks, Andy and Kim from Metro, start speaking in just a few minutes. And then after they've told us about the exciting news of the electric buses in Houston, then we're going to have Robert Powell tell us about some of his adventures recently too. But first, before we do that, I just wanted to tell you folks about something I did last week. I was up in Colorado at the American Solar Energy Society annual conference, and they had a track on electric vehicles. And the folks there were really excited about what's coming in the future. And as Robert knows, we had a special speaker who was given an award at the ACES conference, and that is Tony Seba. If anybody hasn't seen Tony Seba on YouTube, look up TonySeba. What he talks about coming down the road in the future as we go up the S curve, and we're just starting on the steep part of the S curve, is really exciting. So it was fantastic to meet Tony there in person and ask him some questions in person. So that's for another day. I can tell folks about that. Tonight, we said we've got Andy and Kim here. So are they connected up also to Zoom now?
Yes.
All right, so if I share
Yes.
you guys,
If you allow them to share.
then that way you'll be able to do the presentation yourselves as opposed to me running the presentation. So do we stand or sit? Well, we need to have you close enough to one of the computer microphones. So either your computer or this computer. So you folks online, can you hear Andy and Kim?
No, not at all.
All right, so maybe if one of you stand over here near where this computer mic picks you up, okay, then that'll be good. So yeah, you want to stand here. Okay. So I had a little intro ready for you guys, but rather than stand there and read, I know that you're the Chief Innovation Officer, correct, Kim? That sounds exciting. I love that title.
It is fun. It is fun.
Good. Okay.
But this year and a half is all about being flexible and adapting to changes, right? So I appreciate everybody's patience tonight, but as mentioned, I am Kim Williams, and I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for Houston Metro. And just for those of you who are wondering, like, okay, what does the Innovation Office do in public transit? We actually are a new department at Houston Metro, about 5 years old now. I've been in the role for the last 3, but at Metro for the last 14 years. And so basically what we do is we look at emerging technology as it applies to public transit. I think many of you are familiar with Uber and Lyft, and I understand that the public transit industry is going through a period of disruption, which is a word that we're now all very familiar with. And so public transit is no different. And so I'm actually one of many chief innovation officers around the country now who are looking at this space, trying to make sure that public transit stays relevant. And so in that regard, one of the things we do is look at best practices, we look at industry trends, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means. So this title is Houston Metro Pathway the environmental sustainability. I'm asking for. Can you all hear me? So I think by now you all have heard a lot already about the Biden administration's approach on electric vehicles, sustainability, climate change, carbon neutrality. And so that conversation has also reached the public transit realm as well. So we're paying close attention to what the administration is working on in that regard. And we actually have been preparing proposals to look at how we can become sustainable across the entire agency. And we've actually been pursuing several grants in that regard, and we're waiting for the infrastructure bill to come through and see if there's more opportunities to push the power. Next slide. So I mentioned that the Biden administration is looking to invest heavily in this space, and as a way to encourage public transit agencies to also look more closely at this space, the Federal Transit Administration, which is the agency that regulates Metro, has issued a challenge. They call it sustainable transit for a healthy planet account. And so it's a way to encourage agencies to convert to vehicles, become more energy efficient across the board, and to adopt climate action plans, which quite honestly is new for transit agencies as a whole. But we are a part of this challenge, which is going to be growing. More about that. Somebody said you're having trouble hearing. But you'll hear more about that as we get to Earth Day next year, which we'll have to put all of our climate action plans up. Next slide. We do have a climate action plan in our region. So you may already be familiar with the City of Houston's climate action plan. And they have 4 areas that they're looking at, but the one that Metro has been paying close attention to is with transit. And so one of the first items is to shift regional fleets to low and either electric or low emission or zero emission vehicles. So that was already underway with the city, and so we've kind of been looking to them as models. Next slide. So this is what staff, Andy and I have been working on in terms of putting together a sustainability vision statement for the board to look at. And these sustainability efforts will be designed to be the framework for our climate action plan. So the first one, as you'll see, is shifting Metro's fleet to 100% zero emission purchases by 2030. And so that target puts us in alignment with the region, and it's something that we're heavily focused on. There are other items as well, looking at our overall operations in terms of avoiding environmental impacts, applying green principles throughout the agency, collaborating with agencies and groups such as yourself. You all obviously are very interested in this conversation, far more knowledgeable than we are. So we hope that you will continue to be a resource and a sounding board for us, because this is new for us as an agency. And then ultimately we'll roll up into a climate action plan that will roll out in probably around January, February of next year. Next slide. So part of that vision statement, if you will, looks at where we are today. And so we have about 1,200 vehicles, and they're a mix of diesel, CNG, and hybrids. We generally do about 100 buses a year in terms of our fleet replacement plan. But with the pandemic, we have not bought any buses recently. We have had impacted service, which Andy will talk about. So we have quite a few buses, quite honestly, that are not running at the moment. So this is kind of where we are, kind of a baseline that we're looking at. Pivot. Next slide. So looking at kind of how our fleet is today, it's about 6.8 years old. And so we think that it's very feasible for us to make this flip to zero emission vehicles by 2030. We do think that we'll need flexibility, obviously, because we do not have an electric fleet at this time. We'll have to bring that infrastructure in. And so that will require some work with our electrical systems today, bringing in chargers, making sure that the grid is resilient. We've all experienced hurricanes and weather events in Houston and the freeze, which we hope never happens again, but we have to be able to make sure that we maintain and sustain service. Next slide. So as I mentioned before, step 1 is us transitioning to a zero emissions bus purchases by FY 2030. And with that, we'll be purchasing 20 battery electric buses. That bid is actually out on the street. Andy's gonna talk more about that and what that will look like for us and the corridors that we're looking to start on. We are also planning to demonstrate a hydrogen fuel cell bus. We don't have experience with those to date, so we want to look at what's out there and what we call low emission, zero emission fleet. Battery electric is where we're starting, but we'll look at hydrogen next and do a comparison about what makes sense in terms of how we operate. I would add part of the consideration for that is that we went to what we call a long range or high capacity network back in 2015. Some people may have heard of Metro Reimagining, but we have very long routes. We have some of the longest bus routes in the state. So we have to really manage that interest in moving to alternative fleets, but also making sure that we can get the service all the way through a route. And so again, we'll continue to follow funding from there. Next slide. So we'll be actually going to our board next week to start the committee conversation about these sustainability goals I talked to you about tonight, and to ask them to adopt the staff recommendation for 100% zero emission purchases starting in 2030 or before, and also to look towards us to move forward with a climate action plan based on that. Next slide. So I mentioned that we currently do not have electric vehicles in our fleet today. I think we have some electric hybrids, but not what you consider a pure plug-in electric vehicle. With that said, the Office of Innovation along with operations and our planning group is also looking at autonomous vehicles. Autonomous vehicles by their nature are electric vehicles. So we do have some experience with electric vehicles. NMS, the next slide. We did a autonomous vehicle pilot with a vehicle called an Easy Mile vehicle, what you see here. It was a demonstration on a closed loop at Texas Southern University. We started that project in June of 2019, and we unfortunately had to discontinue it due to the pandemic, but it was a very successful project. So you'll see this, what we call it, the Easy Mile manufactured second generation autonomous shuttle. Seats about 12 passengers. It operated solely on the campus of Texas Southern University as a circulator, about 7,000 trips. And it was a great opportunity to expose the public to electric vehicles and also autonomous vehicles at the same time. Luckily, the project did so well that the federal government awarded us a federal grant to continue. And after the next slide. So this is actually a larger vehicle. It's actually already on the market. It's manufactured by a company called Phoenix Motor Cars. And this is a mid-size shuttle. And what will happen is we'll work with Easy Mile to apply their driverless technology to this electric shuttle. I know it doesn't look very futuristic on here, but we're gonna wrap it and all that good stuff, but this is the base vehicle. The reason that we were approved to move forward is that some of the challenges with existing autonomous shared passenger vehicles is that they don't meet federal regulations. Many of them are not compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. They're not compliant with HEAA, and they are not Buy American. The vehicle you saw in the previous slides from a manufacturer in France that's just beginning to bring some operations in the United States. But this vehicle is fully compliant and already operating as an airport circulator in Austin. So if you've been to Austin lately and you parked at one of the remote parking garages, you've gotten on one of these. So that project is in development, and again, it's a federal grant. We are one of selected few around the country to have this opportunity, so we're very excited. And again, we're moving towards fleet operations in the future with these type of vehicles. And so the other project that we're working on, one more slide, this is a prototype. It's just a visual. This bus does not yet exist in real life, but we are a member of what we call the Automated Bus Consortium. The Automated Bus Consortium is actually spearheaded by an engineering group called HEAA. It has about a dozen transit agencies from around the country, including some state Department of Transportation. And so we are in the process of developing this bus, putting out a bid to the bus manufacturing community to see if they can produce it. So it's kind of a challenge program. Currently, there's one autonomous electric bus that is on the market produced by New Flyer, but we want to motivate the market to make more so that we can continue to test and prove out this concept. There is a method to our madness. I know some people are saying, okay, autonomous car is one thing, autonomous bus is another. But there's a concept called platooning, which if we can develop this base bus platform, can be used to communicate between buses, creating a link. And so that the buses can travel like a train or like a light rail, and you can have that same efficiency for a much more cost effective. So that is ultimately what my, Metro and many other transit agencies are looking to get to. So that is the end of my part of the presentation. I'm gonna let Andy come up next, and then we can both take questions at the end if that's okay. Thank you for your time.
Right, can folks continue to hear us online?
I'll talk louder. How about that?
Yeah, okay.
I'm the big mouth from New York. I'll be okay. All right, so my side of it is I'm Andy Skabowski. Most people call me the ADC. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Houston Metro. So if it's got wheels, I got it. My description, my So I run the service. I run the core business. So what I'm going to do tonight is just give you guys an update on where we're at with our zero emission vehicle update, and then kind of give you some tidbits about some of the things we're also looking at as well. One of the things I want to add on to what Kim said about autonomous vehicles, I know you guys like the nuts and bolts and get into the technical stuff. Since an electric vehicle, most of its systems are electric in nature, they're easier to control. And so a lot of them have solid state controls on top of it. So when you add autonomy on it, and you need that certain level of safety factor involved with it, that's why that autonomous and electric kind of are tied together. They go together very well. All right, next slide, please. All right, so what do we have in the market right now for zero emission technology buses? Battery electric. You guys probably see that terrible picture 100 times. I think we posted everybody posted. And then a hydrogen fuel cell. Those are the two base technologies we're looking at as we're looking at zero emission vehicle. Next slide. What's the outlook now in the United States? The dark blues are the states that have most of the electric buses, zero emission buses, I'm sorry. So total US zero emission transit buses, 2790. That's not all in service. That's about 1,000 that are in service, and about 1,700, Robert sends me all the notices that are either under procurement, they're in somebody's future vehicle purchase plans. So there's a lot to come, but there's also a lot happening. So of those 2790, about 2,700 are battery electric, and we're about almost shy of 90 hydrogen fuel cell buses that are either, most of those are in service, and there's some that are in either procurement or in somebody's plan. Next slide, please. How about the state of Texas? Port Arthur 10, these are in service. Lubbock 2, Dallas 7, Fort Worth 2, Boston 10, Odessa 10, McAllen 2, San Antonio 3, Port Arthur 10. Of that, probably Cap Metro has probably made the biggest commitment. They've attached it to their long range plan. It's also a way they use to get funding. And so they have plans to purchase more electric vehicles in short term, electric buses, like I said. One thing of note for this, when it comes back around to maybe some of the questions I'll get at the end. All these came from something called low-no funding. So they applied for low-no funding and they got funded. So it wasn't the agency's money, it was the federal grant that they applied for that. We also applied. We just didn't get it. So that's a little bit about part of our delays, okay? Next slide. Vehicle distribution, it's important to note this. Everybody's about at the same spot we are. Everybody's got a fleet of about 10 or 20. Everybody's in that point in which they really want to get a bus, they want to run it in service, because we run buses. You know, I got buses out there 21 hours a day, 400 miles, and it is pretty heavy duty. The doors open up at every curve, that means I dump all the AC out. And you exercise the vehicle if you use it as a transit bus. So everybody's at that 10 bus to 20 bus window. and everybody's in the same mode. I want to get it, I want to use it, I want to abuse it a little bit. I want to see if they can do what these of us can do. Because our main mission, and everybody says, what's your job, Andy? Is I run stuff in circles, but I move people. And our main mission is to move people. Next slide. Fuel cell transit buses in the United States. Like I said, it's 87. California leads the pack everywhere. Understand also, you guys probably noticed that state of California is state mandate. If I was a transit property and I was operating in the state of California, I couldn't buy anything but a low emission. Next slide. Our options. Let me go through a little bit about what each gives us. Battery electric, it does have a high infrastructure cost. That's something we're grappling with. It needs a lot of power, it needs a lot of chargers, and there's a lot of different scenarios that we're really getting into lately. You guys are probably excited about things like microgrids, and also things that we're going to need to build in because of resiliency, which is a concern. So there's maintenance savings battery electric, no question. Over the whole life of the bus, if it wasn't for the infrastructure, it would be cheaper to run a battery electric bus than it would be a diesel bus. Especially the newer design diesel buses. And from about 2009 up, when it really got crazy, the emissions really got stringent. What you did is you pretty much put everything on the back end of the diesel engine to try to clean it up. And it just, all of our maintenance costs now, most of it, a good hunk of it are in that emission system and those controls on the engine side. Vehicle has a premium, right now it's 70%. We think as they get more and more in the market, obviously that number will drop. And it is a zero carbon emission. Hydrogen. To know that as the operating back in the room, hydrogen probably matches closest to how we run our buses today. Meaning I bring it back to the garage, I fill it, I check it, I clean it, and park it. Battery electric, you charge it and it has to be here for a certain amount of hours. Hydrogen, same thing. I fill it with hydrogen, I service it, I clean it, I park it. And so it more closely matches how we operate the bus. Now, from the fuel cell forward, it's the same vehicle. It's got the same electric motors, it's got everything else. It's producing its electricity on board in the fuel cell instead of getting it charged up in batteries. There is some AC performance concerns. There are also some AC performance concerns with the battery electric vehicle. We got a big interior, we got a lot of people in it, 100 degrees on out that door, and I don't know that you can see. Vehicle cost premium on hydrogen. There's mild cost between fuel cell and battery electric buses. They're about equal because you really think about it, the fuel cell is the only difference. The rest of the vehicle is mechanics is reasonably the same. You get savings on an electric vehicle or a hydrogen vehicle, meaning I don't have oil to change, I don't have belts to change, I got a lot less moving parts in general. And in all honesty, the reliability of the electric motor is better than that of internal combustion engine. So generally, that's to general. So hydrogen and battery electric is about the same. Again, the vehicle premium cost of hydrogen is about 80% more. So on a $500,000 vehicle, it's costing us almost $1 million. The reason for that really is it's not that much involved. There's not that many involved. And that'll come down to the point. Next slide, please. All right, so where we're at. So that's right. We have started this a period of time ago. We met with vehicle manufacturers. We live not on the bleeding edge of technology. We don't lag. We're like our sweet spot. I'm going to tail behind another transit property to get a bus or two to learn what they mean, did right or wrong. That's my philosophy. It's worked well for me. So that's kind of where we're at. The course analysis, we tested our buses during the summer months. We went to different transit agencies. The buses understood how they did and what's going on with them. We got stuck here for about 18 months in the pandemic with soliciting grants. We really actively wanted to get grant money, do grant money. We made a decision recently. We did apply for a grant, but even if we don't get the grant, we've placed the order. We already got the solicitation on the street. So we're going to use our own money at this point. All right, because it's time. We need to get a bus and we need to get them in service. We need to value it. Next slide. All right, what else? We met with a company with Centerpoint and Evolve. Evolve is an organization that I'm quite sure that it's starting involved.
It's a partnership between CenterPoint, University of Houston, and City of Houston to try and motivate electrification of fleets throughout the region. So,
If you go up and look involved on the webpage, should give you a description. They're here to help the Andes and the cities of Houston and Kansas as we get through and step through this. I don't know who should be in the room and have conversations. They're the ones we're having conversations with now about what is our infrastructure needs? What's the facility, what's the real cost associated with the use of the bus and getting the facility upgrades done and maintaining the facility upgrades. They're gonna look at the existing multi-bus program, the 20 buses. We're also gonna look at, if we go system-wide, what it looks like. So as we plan for that 2030, we know we've got the right pieces in place. CenterPoint also is assisting us with another program involved that Kim is helping us, kind of leading and pushing us. We're also looking at where we eventually, as part of the climate action plan, have a kind of a power strategy or power plan for the agency. An example of that would be every one of our bus drivers has a whole bunch of roof space because we park all the buses underneath the roof. Well, part of this is okay if we want to do a microgrid, and we put solar panels on top of those roofs, and then maybe we'll have some gas generation of electricity just for heat shade, and then we kind of make that all work together. The development of a power plant will be part of what we're looking at and working with the CenterPoint involved to do. Next, please. Thank you. We're also partnering with Friends of the City. I'll ask Gary, if my friend at the city, if he wants to come and do a presentation. I think he would like to. I'm going to offer Gary. Gary's good people.
Yeah.
Gary Glasstock is working for the city. He used to work for me before he went over. He was a great guy. We're partnering with them. They're looking at municipal vehicles. They're looking at their support vehicle fleets. They're also they're looking at fleet vehicles and hydrogen fuel vehicles. One of the things that they're really pushing, and we want to be involved, is chargers. I got a lot of public-private, I got like a parking ride where we would partner with them, and we would put chargers in our parking lots for electric vehicles. The key being is that their chargers act and work like our chargers, even the way that you pay for it, because there's going to be some type of surcharge for the actual use of it. Most from the manufacturer, we're going to put it there for free. But we're looking at different charging opportunities and where we can place chargers on metro property, on city-owned property, on parks. Again, to keep expanding that network so we have better use of electric vehicles. So we'll continue that partnership. They're also looking at things like garbage trucks. There's an electric garbage truck. They're a little expensive. The garbage truck, if anything, has a lot of moving pieces. The garbage truck does. So it's kind of garbage. Next slide, please. Opportunities. We haven't touched on this one yet, but that looks a lot familiar to what the vehicle that Haley put up there. But that's just the electric version part. It's just the electric bus cutaway part. We're moving ahead with the purchase of 10 of these, and we're going to use them in our power transit service, which is Metrolift. And so we're looking at charging at the depot and these 10 battery electric cutaway shuttles. And then, like I said, over the next 5 or 6 months, we're going to put a solicitation on the street, which is 3 or 4 hydrogen fuel cell buses. Next slide, let me show you. Okay, in this slide, I'm going to add a bunch of stuff. I'm going to tell you a bunch of other things that I think you guys might want to know. Right now, our next step is to purchase 20 electric buses. We're going to operate them on the Bel Air signature, which is a route along Bel Air that skips stops. It's a little bit of an express. It's branded, it has stops and stuff. And then we're going to also operate on the 28OST wayside. We picked the 28OST wayside because it goes to complete communities. There's a social aspect to it as far as making sure that we serve certain communities. Both and West bus operating facilities. So we're going to operate these at 2 different facilities. And when we buy the buses, each bus comes with its own charger. And so when we get these 20 buses in, 10 buses will go to Polk, and then we'll work a project to get those chargers installed. The chargers are going to take separate service from CenterPoint. They have their own panels and a dedicated line. We'll do the same thing at Polk and West bus operating facilities. We are also going to need opportunity charging during the day. And so the opportunity charging both of these routes were picked because both of them, one of their endpoints is the Texas Medical Center Transit Center downtown. So right off our rail line is the TNC Transit Center right next to it. There's space on that property that allows us to set up 2 opportunity charging stations. They're roof mounted. They all these new designs now have a cantilever type roof mount where they pick up the charge. 10 minutes gets you 30 miles. All it's doing is going to keep topping off. So every time I come in, that operator's going to get a 10 or 15 minute break. It's typically what they get. Let's say around an hour and 10 to come off. It's called relief time. It's makeup time. There's a lot of reasons why they get that 10 or 15 minutes. Some of it is they make up the schedule because they were late. It's just a gap there. It's how we overlap the schedule. We take that time and we'll run that bus underneath the opportunity charging back off. What we figure is that between the full charge at night and an opportunity charging, we'll get into the 300 or 400 mile range that really a transit bus needs to do to be effective. On cutaway stuff, we mentioned Metrolift and Community Connect services. Community Connect is a concept we have, which is a flexible route design. It uses a smaller bus. We have one now up in Acres Homes where the bus runs through a zone and there's 2 anchor points, 2 stops that it makes every half an hour. But in between that, it can stop anywhere else in that zone. So it isn't a traditional running down the street and go to a stop. It's just a little bit more flexible and fun. We're anxious to see how electric bus will do with that service. And again, we'll include buses and all the required facility infrastructure. And like Kim said, we're going to keep trying to work for as many grants as we can. And the raise grant is one. I think we got a lot more support with the raise grant than we did in the past. A lot of times getting a grant is more about having that state and that mayor and that judge and that sign up on it. We got a lot of support for this raise grant. So we're very hopeful. Next slide. Next steps are hydrogen fuel cell buses. My guys have started spec development on it. We're going to visit a couple of transit agencies that are operating it, so we'll be out in California in 4 weeks. And then we'll develop a plan to do 3 to 5 buses. I think we're going to probably settle 3 to 5. And like I said, with anything we do, we're going to keep soliciting. Right. Next slide. Questions? We're both up.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Yep.
We've been getting questions in on the chat. I saw that you happened to see one.
Yeah.
So you caught one
man.
live, that's fine.
It's easy to ask questions on the chat, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. So we've got some more of those. We have some in room, so we'll alternate. So Robert, you want to start us off?
So this question about I'm not mistaken, this is independent of federal funding from the program to fund infrastructure and there's not going to be any tax increase. There's not going to be any tax or debt increases by local government or anything like that.
So the question is about funding.
In the interim, we have applied, we applied again for the little grant this year, but unfortunately we were not awarded. And then, as Andy mentioned, we have a request pending under the RAISE program, which is a tiger grant and some other grants that have been around for a long time. We're still waiting to hear back on that, and it's our hope that if we're successful in getting the RAISE grant, we'll use that grant to purchase 20 buses. However, if we do not get the RAISE grant, as an agency, we have decided to move forward using local tax dollars to do this kind of thing. So hopefully we will get the RAISE grant and not have to do that. But again, in an effort to get this program off the ground, we've been talking about it and researching it for well over a decade now. We just made a decision to just go ahead and get started. So in the future, for future purposes, it will depend on what federal dollars are being. So it is a possibility. It won't be a huge tax, we'll just be using funds that we already have.
You have had on, senators around that.
Right now, bus purchases are not.
You're not-
We put it on the street, we look to collect the grants available. But our bus purchase is part of our operating costs. We do something, actually, we kind of pull the tails, we pretty much, we saw buses, it's actually worked out to be a good way of managing it. And so we were gonna buy 20 buses next year. So really, the difference is 21, in this case, would be the upcharge for the fact that the battery electric.
And really, it's not the vehicle, that's the signature, it's the infrastructure. Yeah, because like, as you said, we were going to buy buses, and these buses are slightly more in cost. But it's just the infrastructure, the initial infrastructure cost that is the escalator in the budget.
So as you answer questions, I can ask you to come close to the
Okay.
microphone over here.
Everybody, huddle around.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine. I can turn it back and forth. So Colin, can you read off questions from the chat or?
There is, what kind of charging is opportunity charging? DC fast charging like CCS or an AC 3-phase for single phase charger?
So you mentioned the catenary up on top.
I knew I'd get technical questions. No, I think, I'm telling my belief it's AC.
Okay.
It's on the AC side, it's coming in AC, I don't think it's transferred, it's DC to go through. It's, yeah, it's gonna be a lot faster on the move through AC charging.
Okay.
He's heard my spiel before.
Yeah, he's on top of this. So someone else in the room before we go? Yeah, Bill.
You mentioned, a lot of covered parking, I assume the buses are idle and would be charged in the evening, nighttime. And if you have covered parking with solar microgrid, that would require a battery to store the, and put it on the bus in the evening. And I was wondering whether there's any, I know center point is the wires, TD&L, what is that? TD&L? And
Transmission, distribution.
yeah, transmission, yeah. But so the use of batteries, are there regulatory standards that are being developed? Is Centerpoint taking or Evolve Houston taking an active role in speccing out large stationary batteries?
What my understanding is so far is developing, well, first of all, you're not necessarily making the solar power to necessarily directly charge the bus. You're making solar power to cells offset your cost.
You know, I asked them.
But but it is a great question, because as part of that, you do want to hold some back. And so we're all looking at different energy storage solutions, and I came up in today's meeting with Shell, who's kind of getting into it as well. So as part of a microgrid, you kind of got that shared aspect. I'm also interested in some battery technology and some battery power without battery. No, not a fuel cell. On the rail side, the whole peak shade. Because rail's great because you'd be amazed how much power I push back to the wire as well. On our braking, we do a whole bunch of regenerative braking on the rail side. All right, so that'll be push power. I know I'm looking at ways in which I can store that power at the substation level. So that's part of what would be the longer term power, part of our power.
Okay, so that is that DC power that?
Yeah,
goes
no,
back
it's
on the line?
AC.
It's AC, okay.
Any AC DC switch occurs on the car now. All right, next question.
So that's really interesting. So when your metro trains
Are slowing down.
doing
we're putting
regenerative
power
braking,
back.
yeah, that's another
We're putting
source
power
of
back in.
power that you could then
Yeah.
use for charging the buses.
Well, no. I think the point is that I push that back into the grid now.
Right.
There is some loss there in the way
Right.
it works. I'm looking at there's ways in which you store some of that power.
Yeah.
And it just helps reduce your cost.
So keep it at the
Yeah.
substation.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's a good way to get some more efficiency into your overall system, yeah. So integrating the trains and the buses power wise. A bit.
A bit, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Solar power.
Yeah.
So is that flat batteries? And if so, who's researching that?
We started some conversations right now with my guy that runs rail. That's where I'm at. I'm not far along.
Okay, so it sounds like right now, there's no batteries, stationary
No,
batteries,
there is.
but in the future, that might be part of such a
If we
system.
got
as
into
that.
the power program, that conversation started coming up. So we can do it.
Yeah, okay, so in the back row over here, yeah, loud.
I'm curious to know the shift in kind of how far off would you say if you were considering integrating with like triple charging on the buses themselves, like from solar? So with the service area that you have on the bus, having panels there to possibly integrate with some opportunity charging on that.
I would say, I mean, that the panels have gotten a lot further along than they have over the years, but I don't think I would get enough for it. It doesn't work. It's just not enough. It's just not enough. It's not, I don't think it's at a high enough level. It's just not enough. But it's a great idea. When they get better, maybe we will get to the point where it's.
So Eric?
Well, first off, we mostly charge those that are helpful.
Mhm.
So during the peak period, normally where you would see high demand charges, we're not charging buses except for during opportunity charging. But that's also why we're looking at microgrids. Because microgrids help you balance out.
We are having a conversation with CenterPoint. They're also doing long range planning. As they decide where they'll put in infrastructure, we made them aware of our plans so that as they do locate their upgrades, hopefully they can locate them near our facilities. And so we'll be able to balance that out.
The initial concern you'll hear, and why a lot of you guys are 10 buses now, you get up to like 30 or 40 buses. And I think the best way to put it is you run out of plugs in the wall at the facility to charge the rest of the buses above that. So then now you're going below center point. I need a sub, I need another transformer, I need more service. And then the bills start coming in. So again, it's more of, I'm gonna buy a lot of electricity off you. At what point are you gonna be willing to work with us and get that price down? So that's what we're going to.
And that's kind of why I bring it up, because to use a diesel metaphor, it's like, okay, diesel's $3 a gallon, but if you're gonna pump it all to the truck at one time, it's gonna be $10 a gallon.
Yeah.
It's the price cost of the way up.
Understood. And that's kind of also, I think, micro. And that's also why hydrogen.
Is there another question?
Hydrogen, that kind of, a lot of that charging station stuff goes away, a lot of it goes away.
You just need to sign up for a free night.
Any other questions from online?
So those were just other comments. I saw that there were some things in the chat.
That, it's such a new technology, I couldn't even answer that question.
I think in this region, the oil and gas industry relies heavily on hydrogen. And so we probably are better positioned than most. So I know the state of Texas, and we're talking to some local organizations about maybe using a hydrogen hub. So I think we're in this space.
And I think what's going to grow in the hydrogen market is moving from, I guess there's hydrogen, and then there's something called blue hydrogen, and it's green hydrogen. You want green is good.
Green is more, gray is natural.
Yeah. So how they make it is something that we have to be cautious of. Because, blue at the end of the day, if you look at what they call well-to-wheel emissions, making hydrogen out of natural gas doesn't have a great picture as, and it also, like, even with a battery electric, if people get too far out of the ERCOT grid, how that power is made has an overall effect on the wheel-to-well emissions of that vehicle. And that's why we always call it tailpipe emissions. That's what our end is. But how people make the electricity is something that we've met with EDF, Environmental Defense Fund, and they've gone through and it's something that we watch for as we're moving through this.
So Robert?
Okay, what about your other electric transportation, light rail? Is there any plans for that, expanding that to the suburbs?
That's your next conversation.
Yeah. In our long-range plans, we do have plans to extend the light rail, but it's not to suburban locations. We do have a Hobby Airport extension plan. But at this time, not a suburban extension. There's an extension of the courthouse, the courthouse downtown, and I think that's about it.
Because that's where we really come in, that's where they look at a lot of the systems nationwide and worldwide. There's the suburban to urban center and,
So what, now let's speak, build on that, open up the conversation away from the light rail to some of the things that King was talking about, was connected vehicles and electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. In a dedicated right of way, it's a lot easier to get an autonomous vehicle to work for us. In a connected vehicle, let me give you an example. I live on Cape. You know, before pre-COVID, every 3 minutes a bus left on the Grand Park parking lot. It was a great parking lot. Hell, we got that parking lot full like it was great. Connected vehicles, first vehicle has a driver, second or the third vehicle is connected. It doesn't have a driver. It pulls up instead of loading up one vehicle, or three. It leaves, it gets on a dedicated right of way for the which really that's my. And we motor on in. We motor on in. And so kind of that's, you know, some of the technology conversation we're looking at is how do we get an LRV like for capacity without the LRV like force? Because LRV is not exactly a cheap way. Now we do have 80 someone, how many miles of BRT plant?
Oh, I think it's more than that. I think it's 110.
110 miles of BRT bus rapid transit. We have a pretty good version of it. We would actually, we're learning some from it in Uptown, in which it runs in a dedicated lane. It runs a lot like in the library. It pulls up to a platform. It's got a berth, and so it's a lot closer. It's as close as you can get with a bus to make it look like and act like a rail car, and it provides good service. So that's something we're looking at. BRT is most definitely in our plan. Again, how do we get a lot of miles without the LRT?
Online question, will there be any battery storage at the bus charging station for load leveling purposes?
Yes, that would be, if we're looking at microgrids.
I think that's what
Yeah,
you talked
yeah.
about earlier.
And so microgrids gives us the ability of not only producing electricity by solar or some alternate source, but also some battery storage or some storage of electricity.
This
Right.
is a more complicated one. I recently learned about the Downs-Thompson paradox, and while it's not specifically related to electric buses, I was curious whether this matches your experience when planning metro service in Houston. Downs-Thompson paradox, which holds that the equilibrium speed of car traffic on a road network is determined by the average door-to-door speed of equivalent journeys taken by public transport, i.e., would you expect that we would reduce car traffic by decreasing bus travel times?
Yes, most definitely. And that's why one of the projects we're looking at this year is we've now reached a kind of partnership with the city of Houston. And one of the things that increases bus speed is traffic signal optimization. All right, so the city of Houston has something called Vision Zero. Vision Zero says I'm going to get 0 accidents, fatalities related accidents. One of the main tenets of Vision Zero actually is to slow the traffic down. And us to take a light and say that applies, make sure we take care of pedestrians at that light. Also say that if I'm in the bus and I've got 40 people, I'm gonna get a little bit better treatment. So the bus goes up to the light, pulls out the light, says, I'm coming, I'm about here. Hold that red for green for me 6 seconds long so I can get through. That's the simplest version. There's a lot more complicated. You can do things like where the bus goes off on the left and skips around a whole bunch of other buses on cars. But the basic thing is I get a little bit better treatment out of light. And so what we're looking at is transit corridors. So downtown is a perfect example. And eventually we're going to get to your project next, and you hit your project next. But you know, we've got hundreds of buses going up and down north-south parking lot buses every day. And they bump into each other. They just do. If we have a little bit better treatment at lights and we get a little bit better spacing on stops, we can get those buses through quicker. So yes, he's 100% right. If you increase the speed buses on, people will get, and match it closer to a car ride, people will get on the bus. And it mentioned you red lane.
Right, so related to that, I think many of you already know that downtown Houston has a bus only lane, the curbside lane, and a carpool lane. Well, over the years, that behavior has not stayed in place. People are starting to use the lanes whenever they want. It's causing operational problems for Metro as well as slowing down drivers. So we will be implementing a project, we call it Red Lanes, where we'll be treating the curbside lane as a bus only lane through lane markings and signage. It won't be all red, but it'll have, red signage as a visual enforcement mechanism to let people know what to do in which lane. And the adjacent lane will continue to be a carpool lane. And so it'll create hopefully some order and structure as you travel through downtown, so you'll know which lane to be in, where you can safely make turns. And it's also related to Vision Zero because it'll create more understanding of all the users, because those lanes were put in 2005. And you didn't have bike lanes then, you didn't have as many pedestrians or residential downtown then. So everything was about cars. Well, now there are many more users. And so the hope is that the Red Lanes project, which will start on Travis Street, and then we move over to Milam, we'll start to bring that structure back and create a usable environment for all the network road users, not just, we love vehicles, we love cars, but we're just trying to create more balance between everyone.
There's a general thought process in the city level of sometimes you fix vehicle speeds by making it easier for a vehicle to get through. Sometimes you do it by lowering the amount of cars on the street, and that's all about capacity. And so a train or a bus is going to carry a lot more people, and you require a lot less cars. So it's all about throughput. So instead of measuring how many cars go through an intersection, we're trying to get to where we're going to measure how many people go through an intersection. It's not an easy sell in the city of Houston. It's just but it's red lanes you'll see in New York. You see them in other cities. You're in Austin, yeah.
Oh, they are. Okay.
It's the new best practice for managing traffic behavior in almost any urban downtown.
But what about, you get a lot of turbulent flow. You think about it, buses going in and out, cars going in and out. We're trying to get the flow a little bit more laminar. Everybody's going to come in the right direction.
Okay. Chief?
Two things. How do you see the receptiveness of the board when you talk to them this week?
Very good.
The receptiveness of the board.
We've been working on it.
I know.
And then also it helps, there is one or two, there is a champion.
Well,
We
we
have
got
several
the mayor now, and then other politics, and all the stars are aligned.
Yeah.
I'll say one, Evolve Houston, new thing, what is Evolve? Evolve started basically as a work group with as many smart people as we could put in the room and figure out how to solve problems. That's how Evolve started, and it evolved into what it is. It literally, okay, the other one is one, I'll throw an idea out here, that obviously, you want to really push metro ridership and do that and solve the huge problems with multi-tenant people and people that will use that, is put charging in the parking lots for people to charge their vehicles with. It's going to give you the ability, that's a key place where your opportunity charging should be located. And down the future, as we get to make that work with the vehicle, the grid, with that works to solve the whole problem, because it creates a huge microgrid node. It will solve a huge amount of your problems.
Good.
So that is, you do one single thing, because the biggest problem, people live in apartments and everything else, they don't have a place to charge their vehicle. Okay, the ability is to get them to go there, and the utilization will improve. It solves a huge problem with center point and everything. The other one is thing down the road, when you get to your autonomous bus thing, going down the road and doing that. It's not there yet, but I'd say 15 years out, if it will look at the future to do that.
So tell me why.
Just look at that. Oh, even that, I'd say it's gonna get there faster, things moved up with COVID, but don't underestimate the fact that, you'll have, that's about the point where battery technology is gonna change to charge batteries a lot quicker with solid state battery technology, 2025 to 2030, as well as the advent of where dynamic and motion charging will come in there, so the power will be in the road, so you won't have to carry so much battery. But once you get to that HEAA, that hot lane infrastructure with the buses and those freight trains, what you're doing with autonomous is the right way, power and charging will be in the road.
I think you're right. I think you're actually right.
No, I was just gonna say really quickly to your suggestion about chargers at park and rides. We actually just got word last week that Metro, as a part of a University of Houston research team, got a National Science Foundation grant to do a planning study around West Belfort on how to reconfigure Metro's park and rides. We're using this to create a template for our current and future park and rides of how to put smart charging infrastructure into our facilities and also integrate it into potentially our fare media. So it's a planning exercise, but the hope is that it will give us that template that we'll be able to get to Andy and we can go from there.
Now, the other thing, to your point about performance in terms of walking, perfect example is about engaging. We've got a whole walking complex next to it. I mean, I would see what that, there's a gate now, and you could just set up like a certain amount of parking, but there's a potential there.
And I say it works because most people that are in there and parking, it works because you've got a longer time to charge the vehicles, so your demand is huge.
Yeah.
As you would have in a traditional over the highway high power charging system.
Yeah, on the whole food.
Those vehicles are going to be sitting there for 8 to 10 hours in most cases, so your demand to charge those vehicles is nowhere as high as a high power DC over the road charging.
I think our issue too has been the lack of uniformity amongst the chargers. And so we did have a meeting with Tesla last week and about a different topic, but they said that they will possibly be reconfiguring their chargers to be.
They're going to reconfigure theirs because they want to open their network up to other people. Tesla's supposed to do that by Q4 this year, to let other people charge vehicles on Tesla charging stations. All you're really looking for in the rate is J1717 to connect level 2. You're just deciding whether you want the options of having the charging stations there versus the liability of having a plug where somebody can plug their thing in. That just gets into the liability associated with it versus the fixed J1717. And they're very cheap where that's starting to get to now from level 1 or level 2 level.
And that's a little bit about what, that's a lot about what we're looking at with city. We're going to partner to do it together.
It's the biggest problem with apartment complexes to do that, because it's really hard on the apartment complex, where do you locate it, what do you do, who charges it? And a lot of it is obviously how the electricity is paid for, and people get to it as a immediate situation with our regulations. It's something I think Metro being an agency probably can work with. You get, there's workarounds that you can work with.
We could go there.
Traditional people can't do it.
All right, well, I'm going to take that suggestion on. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Robert.
Going back to the long haul. The way it's solved Europe. Back. They would have buses, the ranges like your trains that have overhead electric pickups, right? And you merge that with a lot of batteries. If you could do that inexpensive from the infrastructure standpoint, that's a good cost. Dedicated roads, all you need is that overhead thing, and you top off all the time, and you just disconnect when you need to and go around.
Also, we have the test right now, we're testing buses that charge every other stop. And so their batteries are incredibly small, bus price is a lot less because they're charging top of off every other stop. Those chargers are incredibly fast. So they don't charge for 5 minutes.
I think the tough thing for us is obviously Europe, Asia, they're way ahead of us, but we have a federal rule called Buy America. So a lot of those buses that you see, we're not able to.
Right.
Not yet.
Right. And the point is, so don't stop looking just at California with their, look over there and say, when is that coming to the US? When are they going to bring it up here? So we can.
I absolutely agree. No, and I agree. One of the reasons why we're even, one thing to know about the European and Asian market is hydrogen is going. They're really pushing on hydrogen as well. So we have been watching this market. Now, you mentioned, I think the point you were trying to bring is about induction charging in the pavement, and we've done.
They use overhead rail, just like you do in your metrics.
Oh, gee, it's going a full circle.
It's overhead rail, which is kind of expensive.
It's very expensive.
You tie it.
But I'm saying, you're talking about going full circle in your life. When I started my career at Scepter in Philadelphia, I ran track with straws. So, that's pretty much what it is. You track with straw, you get 2 wires and 2 ropes. Yeah, charges up.
Yeah.
Now, Canterbury, 2 problems with Canterbury is cheap. Just know that. 2, it gets a lot of community, at this point, a lot of community going, I don't want that in my front yard. They just don't, because with cat comes cat pole, comes power, comes, there's a lot to it. It's just a lot involved. I'm not saying that's part of our thinking process, but I'm just saying that's some of the challenges to it.
So Bill and then Robert.
Is the non-bus fleet 1%, 5%?
We have about 600 non-rev vehicles, and it's not fully developed enough to go to a public meeting and talk about it, but there's plans to buy, probably we're looking at 15 bolts, just to get them in and see how they handle. That, I guess the bolt has a kind of an SUV version of it. It's a little bit different bolt. I'm sorry? EUV, yes. And then also we're trying to get ourselves in line to get lightning. You saw, guys showed me outside I drive an F-150. I drive an F-150 because I'm typically the guy that got to go out in the storm and I need something a little more height. Trust me, I really want to light.
I was just gonna say, I bet you're waiting for the lighting, yeah.
Oh, darn, you're giving me that light. I really want it. Yeah, we're trying to get in line to buy some light. Well, the city's getting in line to buy lightning. The city's buying bolts as well. So you'll see the city fleet.
Well, just like getting those traffic lights to help the buses a little bit, maybe you can get Ford to help you get those lightnings a little faster.
One problem with our support vehicle fleet, we probably got about 100 conventional type vehicles. A lot of what Metro has for fleet vehicles are wreckers, bucket trucks, E350s with boxes, stuff that can go on a ballasted track. It's just, they're different kinds of vehicles. But most definitely for our conventional style vehicles, we're looking at that as an option.
So Robert?
It said that one of the steps there is that you met the representatives from other agencies, and which one was you most impressed by and why, and maybe least impressed and why?
The questions about other agencies.
LA Metro has kind of always been our model that we look to. They have a significant amount of financial resources.
That was to say their problem.
Yeah. So they're able to do things more on the leading edge, and they're usually a step ahead of most transit agencies. And then you add on the fact that California has a mandate across the board, and LA Metro is their largest agency in the state. So, I would say that's number one.
I would have to agree, LA Metro. I mean, to the point now where LA Metro is even tackling if I have 300 buses show up at a garage all in the middle of the night, how do I get them all charged without needing the charger for everyone? They're trying to tackle that, which is, that's big money. And they're doing things like smart charging, and, shifting off the load shade and stuff. But they're starting to tackle that because I think one of their initial studies is they're looking at one of their garages going 100% electric, and they would have to redo they're looking at now when the charge is high, dropping the wire. And they're talking about the infrastructure questions is mind-blowing because they have to rebuild structure and find spaces for the charging. You got to go to the bus garage at 5 a.m. and you get at 3 a.m. and you're pulling out and see how every little inch matters. It does because it's just a kind of ballet, a really wild ballet watching those buses.
Yeah, further, not LA Metro, and I'm trying to remember, it's more in another part of California. They've been doing hydrogen for 20 years.
Oh,
I could.
shoot, Chuck, we talked.
Yeah. I know that I'm thinking of people, I'm gonna throw the agencies. So yeah, so they're just a beat ahead on some of this. So I would say there, and we're paying close attention to Austin. Austin has just launched a very ambitious program, as Andy mentioned, their long-range plan. And so we're talking to them regularly, keeping close track, and we've always had a share between, us and the other agencies in the state, so. But hopefully, we'll be in the fray ourselves and be able to do our own.
You got other project the other way that went out early, San Antonio went out real early. And they got the first version of the Terra's. And Terra's a cool company to do a lot of neat stuff. Their technology side is really good. Bus building side is not getting equal of other bus builders. They were really a technology company that decided to build buses. And, we got bus companies that have been building for 4 years. So they've caught up. I give them a lot of credit in the last couple of years. That bus quality is really not up. But San Antonio got first group. And they're like, oh, we're gonna wait now a little bit because it was hard. It was, sometimes you get, I mentioned that, edge of technology, you want to be careful exactly where you sit. I think San Antonio's right on the bleeding edge of it. And
There's 20 across, we put it out for 10 years, all one manufacturer, same different ones.
There's 20, we're gonna go with one manufacturer. We're low bid, because we don't, based on our, I don't know, I was corrected here, but there's something about our renewal legislation that says that we got a low bid, but, we're, as far as, we got to agree.
Your temperature, the temperature thing is always a big thing down here.
Now, so AC systems, it used to lead as far as a toughest spec in the United States to pull down. But Houston pull down test is actually mimicked around some operations that we do at Metro. A bus sits outside at our midday lot all day, and it gets baked by the sun. And then after it sits there all day, somebody gets into it and turn it on, and they turn the AC up, and they go to the end of the line. Well, we figured by the time they started it and got to the beginning of the line where customers see it, it's about 30 minutes. And so the Houston pull down says we actually put a bus in a paint booth, bring it up to about 120 degrees. We bake it, get it all hot, really hot and warm, and then we turn the AC on, and we see how long it's in 30 minutes. It's supposed to get to like about 70. So it was a pretty tough test. So.
But we're also finding that the other amenities on the bus also draw the battery. The AC is big too, but we're finding, the camera system, the USB ports, all of that is drawing in a greater way than we would imagine.
Dayton. I'm talking about, we don't have that problem here. Dayton gets cold wind.
Yeah.
They got it really. They have BYEs. Indianapolis, I'm sorry, Indianapolis. And we were up there looking at the New York electric bus. We froze on the bus. The poor driver had, she shut her AC on the heat off because the bus wasn't going to make it. You see there were gloves and a scarf and a hat. Cold as dead.
But at the 4 a.m. pull out, we were done.
They've added diesel fire auxiliary heater on.
Questions. Is electric heat an issue?
Yes. Yes.
The other question is, was there any lessons learned when we had the grid failure in February in terms of an electric bus fleet?
Go ahead.
I would say we don't have an electric bus fleet, thank God. At least in February, because we would have been stuck. The grid was just down for everyone. And that's what we were saying on one of the slides. I talked about flexibility, because we're resilient when it comes to our current fleet. We now have to figure out how to be resilient with an electric fleet where we lose the grid. So we're looking at microgrids. I think microgrids are a given for us. If for us to really pull this off.
How do you pump your diesel fuel? How did you deal with diesel fuel pumping on some buses so that you got backup generation?
Yeah, we got our backup, we also finished some backup. A lot of our backup power is designed for emergencies.
Yeah.
It's warm water.
Right.
They got cold, and some of our designs, older designs that had like water lines above the electric truss, and we found out all the way around because of the cold. So we found some resilient solutions with our generators, but we have emergency generation to critical fuel, any license needed, lifts, you got a bus have to go on with the lift. So certain things are tied to electric work generators. We have generator facilities.
And in disaster recovery, to do that, you have to figure too, that if your buses, you try to keep things fully charged, your buses are too far, your energy stores getting right from the grid to do that. And if you're critical infrastructure, that's what some of them should be looking at. Obviously, that's where if you're gonna put some heating generation and shade and do things for emergency things, the bus fleet for emergency, that's where your center point where an energy generation you want to locate there.
Yeah.
They're natural gas fired heating generation stations because you are critical infrastructure, I mean, hospital and buses and communication are critical infrastructure.
Cities on fire trucks, police cars, stuff. You know, it's a total different mindset. You know, in a storm now, I worry about whether or not I got every diesel tank filled. And I fill every bus and I fill every diesel tank. It's just different. The same thing. It's just.
Same thing, well, fuel we have.
Yeah, I'll charge every single bus. I can only use what I need to use. For as long as I get away with it.
Yeah, Robert?
I just like to suggest one of the ways, Phil was mentioning, okay, what do you do when the electric power is done? And I just like microgrids and solar, maybe expand the solar infrastructure and just go off the sun. And
Microgrids, like Kim said, microgrids need to be part of our plan.
Yeah, like most of the problem, it wasn't wind that was freezing up in the winter, it was gas, natural gas pipelines and natural gas facilities were freezing up during the vortex. And they're trying to blend in, but it really wasn't.
Yeah.
It was a catastrophic failure. I don't know.
Too many things went wrong.
Yeah, it was like a perfect storm.
And just have, what do you have, electricity, turn the gas, gas on.
Somebody gets the award for deciding to just pull the plug and shut it down before the whole thing went black. So it was that guy, you know. You gotta pull the plug and shut it down because it all goes. It's a whole-
Yeah, you can't abuse your system and then expect it to work. You've got to stop before the point you're abusing.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Pick up the pieces.
Right, question? So the capacity of the microgrids question.
No, I'm not. I honestly, I don't get that far into the weeds. I'm sorry. I can get you that information, but
In
not.
terms of, I guess, buses, so how many buses maybe refuel or charge?
You know, if we go electric, I got bus garages with 350 buses in them. Yeah, I mean, West Bus facility got 350 buses. Most of them around 250 is what.
Do you think you might rethink your strategy? Because obviously when you have buses that require a lot of maintenance, diesel engines and so forth, it makes sense to centralize them. When you have very low maintenance buses, would it make more sense to have many more mini depots so that you can charge a few buses here? Because that's where the route starts, because all your routes can't start at that 350 bus station. And so you locate the buses where they're going to start their routes in the morning. It's more convenient for the drivers. It means less miles on the buses. And it helps the electric grid because, as you say, at some point, you're going to talk to CenterPoint about installing more capacity anyway. So why have it bring it to the 350 bus depot you have now, which was built for diesel maintenance, when it'd be better to have 10 mini stations in one quarter segment of the city? Yeah, I know that. It is a paradigm shift,
I like to
absolutely.
bring everything home, tap it, put it to bed, and make sure it's ready for the next morning, but I get it.
Yeah.
I think thinking out of the box is gonna be a number one.
Yeah.
I mean, I can take buses to 10 homes every day. Close to where the drivers live.
We're working with CenterPoint, and so they're actually supposed to be working on some of the questions around microgrids, how they can be incorporated into our existing locations. So we hope to be able to get more information about it. It's still very early in the process for us, and we don't have any experience with microgrids, so we'll be looking, you know, to CenterPoint, our utility provider, can help walk us through that.
Just one additional data point for you. So I'm on the board of the Houston Renewable Energy Group, which is part of Texas, which is part of the ACES that I mentioned at the beginning, American Solar.
Oh, wow.
And one of the things that I was really astonished by, so about a year ago, or maybe it's a year and a half ago, pre-pandemic, we had a speaker who is a real estate expert. I'm thinking, why do we have a real estate lawyer coming to Houston Renewable Energy Group meeting? And he was spot on. He said the hottest property in Houston to buy, to invest in, is an acre or two right next to a substation. And the reason was because they wanted to put batteries in to buy low and sell high on the electricity market. And so to me, it's like, well, where is it that you should put these mini depots? Right next to where they're putting the batteries in, right next to the substation. And obviously they're buying that everywhere.
Because microgrids is not just for us. I think microgrids is growing.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, if people are doing it just based on market principles, you know, it makes sense for Metro to kind of follow where the electricity is. Yeah, so. Yeah, so a couple more questions and then we'll switch over to Robert Powell. So Robert. Okay, it's been tried and yeah, it's been tried a few times unsuccessfully around the world, but now we're hearing that in Asia, especially for small things like little electric bicycles, that the battery swaps are proving to be really, really popular because the batteries are small. You don't need any equipment. You just pick it up by the handle, swap them out. Say again? Well, I'm not saying, I'm just saying that things are starting small and we can learn from that experience what works and what doesn't with battery swaps, because companies that have tried it around the world with big equipment and big stacks of batteries all just waiting to be put into a vehicle all went bankrupt. And so something wasn't good in that model.
And the battery technology is evolving.
Right.
They're getting lighter and smaller.
Yeah.
In every iteration. So the hope is that we'll eventually get there. But
Yeah.
we are looking at battery swaps.
Yeah. Okay.
Online question?
Yes. Okay.
What about like Rome is doing with the electric school buses, being able to vehicle to grid and support back charging?
Vehicle to grid.
B2G.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the issue is infrastructure again.
Okay.
And the initial infrastructure cost is so cost prohibitive. When you get into advanced approaches like that, it kind of escalates even more. So
Sure.
it just depends on if it's economically feasible, if the infrastructure can be installed. And then we don't own all of the infrastructure. So,
Right.
you know, having to work with our partners.
I think in this, the case of school buses, what they were doing is that after school, they had all that period of time and they could actually make money. Because they can use it, but that's not your, that's not.
Yeah, a school bus tends to have more downtime. In particular, there's that evening peak when everybody goes home and the grid is for decades seen that peak in the duck curve. And if you have a 3-degree school bus, you can now supply power to cut
So
that.
at 5
duck-
o'clock when it's getting real hot in Houston, the concrete's so hot, you're selling power.
Right, a school bus schedule kind of to me seems like it would fit
Guess
that
what? That's
model.
when I'm taking people home.
Right. Yeah.
And I guess I should add too, I mean, we haven't given up on the dream of going 24/7. I probably shouldn't say that to the ops guy.
We're all
We're
on
getting
24/7.
further away from that.
Okay.
Hopefully, so,
We're at 22/7.
yeah.
Really? Wow. Okay. You get 2 hours of sleep a night. That's nice of them to give you 2 hours.
You can do that with electric. And then we actually tried that a number of years ago with hybrid buses, where our MCIs, we actually had short, we had a function for shore power where we could plug in. The bus wasn't, it was hybrid, it just didn't work in that environment, but that was how we tried like 12 years ago, 13 years ago, things changing. And that is part of our thought process is how to preset a bus that it's cold while you're charging before it goes out. That'll help us with the cold out for sure. And you know, AC systems have gotten themselves a lot better over the years. One thing we found with, when you try to get that much AC in a bus, is other than it's really hot, you kind of get that weird, it's cold, but it's not drawing enough humidity out. It's like too big of an AC in a house, it doesn't work. And so we're actually seeing us temper down, use some pull down a little bit as the actual, as you get in different compressor design and everything else, you can tone down that a lot. We're going to electric drive compressors instead of, when you stick it in the back of the motor, you have a lot of choice of how you control that compressor. When you got an electric scroll drive compressor, you can do a lot more. So that's helping with the AC issues, even with battery electric, because it's a lot better controls and a lot better use of the system.
Okay, thanks a lot, Andy, Kim. Give them a round of applause.
Thanks for coming out. Yeah, yeah. This has been fantastic. We've all learned a lot, and yeah. And thanks again for Metro letting us, when we go to jury duty, to ride the buses for free. That's really good. Yeah. So, all right.
Actually, I'll pull this up here. Okay. So we'll let you go ahead and wrap up over there. And we have Robert Howell.
You okay with it?
Yeah. And
Thank you.
there's Robert with his video on. All right. Yeah. So Robert, can you, do you have anything you want to show us with a shared screen, or do you just want to
Yeah,
talk?
I've got that ready, and I'll throw it here up in the back. It's just the Archimoto website. It's a nice, visual representation of what's actually going on. So I was lucky enough to be invited up to Oregon, to Eugene, Oregon, to go and see the Archimoto. They had a public relations press event day at the Portland International Raceway, and they were showing off the FUVs, which is their three-wheeled vehicle that they have. And they were also showing off the new Roadster that they've got coming down the line. But they were most there for talking about some of the new product inventions that they've got coming down the line as well. So I'll talk about Archimoto first, and then the Roadster, and then some of the points that they've got coming down the line. So the Archimoto is a last mile vehicle, basically vehicle. It's a fully electric. It is a 137-mile vehicle, and it tops out at 80 miles an hour. The one that I was given for the weekend definitely did not top out at 80 miles an hour. I will tell you that I got well into the triple-digit range with it on the raceway, and had a blast doing it. It's very similar to the Aptera, but it's way funner and it's way cooler. It's a dual motor front system, reverse trike. So 2 motors up at the front and no motors in the rear, which gives it the great ability that when you're going around corners, it likes to step out a little bit and, get a little bit loose, which for driving is absolutely a blast. You can see here in the video that it does actually have quite a bit of storage. I put my motorcycle helmet in the back of the container with no problem. We picked up groceries, and there was other people there that have literally had it for weeks and at a time, and basically made it their whole entire daily vehicle. They're working right now on a kind of like a rental style for showing off, whereas you basically rent it for a day, week, month, or a year, and you can go from there. But they are working on a direct to customer sales, so you can actually buy it straight. The one cool thing that we had while we were there was the Pizza Huts and all the delivery chains, especially with the pandemic the way it is. They've gone to these deliverators, which basically they take the back seat out as you can see here, and they basically make it one giant storage area. And when I say giant storage area, think of it, you've got a whole nother person that you can fit in there. There's a company that retrofitted one of them called Hotbox, and they actually sold 15 of them to the local pizzeria, and the local pizzeria runs around with these hot boxes all day long, and they are constantly busy. The great thing is, because it is an electric vehicle, they said that their cost to charge for the past year, during the whole pandemic, was for these 15 vehicles was less than $25 total. And they were recharging it multiple times a day, not really giving a hoot about battery care. And they were doing a great job with it. They also had an ancillary iPad hooked up that was pulling from the main battery through the DC-DC. And it worked great for them. The other one is that the city of Oregon's fire department actually has a whole entire fleet of these. So this is Springfield's, which is the home of the Oregon Ducks. They have a whole fleet of these FUVs because they can maneuver significantly quicker than a big fire truck, as of course. And they can get around things. And to give you an idea, it literally is about 6 foot wide. So anywhere that basically a regular motorcycle can go, these things can go. And they're able to get in and get out. The storage area on the back is enough for a full medical kit, which is 65 pounds of medical gear. And they can get in and out. That siren is significantly louder than you would assume. And of course, being electric, it makes it way easier to get around. So that was their current lineup. The next product that they have, and this was kind of the whole reason for going up there, was to see this new product that they had called the Roadster. So basically, they took a FUV and they cut the top off of it, and that was it. They said, we're done, that's it, and they made this basically topless version of it, which was really, really cool. And getting to drive it, especially as an avid motorcyclist, it was a great thing. I absolutely enjoyed riding it. I enjoyed driving it. I got that one up to about 90 miles an hour on the track a couple of times, and had no problems with it whatsoever. One interesting thing is, because, and I'll come back here to the FUV, because it does actually have independent front motors. They actually have enabled torque vectoring control. This is in line with their master scheme of having fully autonomous driving vehicles, is that they can go ahead and they can actually, torque vector control the steering. Well, that comes into play because down the line, they plan to have kind of like a ride share summoning program where you can summon a FUV to your door. It will drive to your door, and then you take over like you would normally. I've actually seen the demo of it at the press event. They actually had 2 of the units that were fully autonomous, and they actually did laps around Portland Speedway. And it was great to watch these vehicles take off with no one in them, and literally show up at the start finish line, just someone jump in and gun it, and you were gone. So it was really cool to see that. But the technology is there, and they're online with that. So. But yeah, it was a fun video. I've got a clip here that I'm going to play just in the background, talking about the Arcimoto itself. But it's really cool. They are planning to come to Austin in the next, I think, year and a half with their rental model. The only problem is, of course, that Texas, for a motorcycle vehicle, requires a helmet. Which is not something that most people have, and so that's something that the rental system would have to come into line with. So that's one of the legal problems that they're working through. Right now, you can go to California and you can rent them. You can go to Florida, to Key West, and you can rent them there, as well as, of course, in Oregon. You can rent them up there. So, questions?
So they've produced quite a few of these if they have them out in rental fleets already.
Yes. So they have, right now, they've got just over 400 on the road. And they have two facilities. They have the AMP, which is the Arcimoto manufacturing plant, and then they have the RAMP, which is the Roadster Arcimoto motoring plant. The RAMP is coming online. That's for the new one. The big also key announcement that they made at the show was the fact that they are partnering with Monroe and Associates to streamline their production facilities, to the point that they are planning to get cost production down to around $9,000 a unit. Currently, they're sitting at about 17,000, and the plan is to get down to 9,000 for a base model, which really makes it a viable thing for small city grid commuting. So,
Yeah, definitely. What about charging for long distance travel?
So this is not designed for long distance by any stretch of the imagination. This is designed as a maximum, around city grid. You can actually see here in the demo, this is actually at the one vehicle pulling up and then him taking off. And that was completely autonomous control from his app on his phone. That was the demo that they had. And you can see here, him unbuckling, he got where he needed, and now it drives off. This is the AMP, which is where they build all the Arcimotos. All of them are handmade, and they're all production equipment. But back to the point, they're only designed for about 70 miles of range. They're not designed for anything bigger. If you think more along the lines of a Zero SR motorcycle or something along there, that's where they lie at. So it's a great commuter bike. It's a great around town, but it's not designed for any distance work at all.
So it would have to be trailered to get it from one town to another.
You can definitely be trailered. There have been people that have taken it on 400, 500 miles of trip, but they were definitely doing some we'll call it strange things to get it to where they needed to go. It does only have a 3.3 kilowatt J1772 charger on board. It's only got a 8.5 kilowatt battery on board, and so it's not exactly the most energy dense partner there.
Okay, no, so that meets the design. So questions here? Are there any side curtains for rain?
Say again?
Are there any side curtains in case of rain?
So there are doors that come midway, but there are no side curtains. The nice thing is that the front windshield does actually do a really good job of blocking out most of the rain. We did drive it through rain because, of course, Oregon is known for having its rain. And the only time that we got a little bit damp was when we stopped at a traffic light. So.
Okay, more questions? Any online questions in the chat? Okay. So the standard configuration is for 3, 1 in the front and 2 in the back?
No, it's 1 and 1.
1 and 1, okay.
So it's a tandem configuration. So 1 in front, 1 behind.
Oh, I see. It's the headrest of the front seat that I saw line up with the back headrest. So that's why I was thinking I saw 2 headrests in the back. Okay. just watching the images as they go by.
Yeah. No, it's a really fun thing, and it's snappy. The drivability of it was really awesome. And the fact that it can just pretty much go anywhere. You do have full reverse on it, which is also, you know, a really nice thing, especially if you've ever driven an electric motorcycle. Having a reverse gear on there is really nice. The one thing they do tout is Rockstar parking, and I will attest that Rockstar parking is actually really awesome. So
When you say Rockstar parking, you're referring to a small parking place?
yeah, the fact is that you take up almost no parking at all, and you can actually fit 3 Archimotos in the space of 1 Buick Enclave. So
Wow.
I mean, you can see here, you know, and so there was a group of 4 of us that had them, and we all had them parked up side by side. And a Suburban actually came up and parked, you know, right next door to us and actually blocked us in. We couldn't get out because the Suburban had blocked us the way he had.
Oh, gee, that almost sounds like problems when electric car charging spots are iced by an ICE vehicle.
Yeah, pretty much. So.
And I noticed there it had a NASDAQ listing, so they're actually gone public.
Yes, they have. So they went the traditional IPO route. They built the first versions. So if any of you were at fully charged, they actually had some of these at fully charged in 18. And they had 3 of them there, and that was just before they went on the NASDAQ. They have done very successful with it. They created the proof of concept, and then they went ahead and they released onto the NASDAQ, and they've been very successful after that as well. So
Very good. Very good. Yeah,
I
Fred.
noticed that when they were racing, they were showing them on the racetrack. When they're pulling corners, the whole thing was leaning, you know, like you were on a motorcycle. It doesn't appear to me like these sedan types do that. So is there a different model, like a roadster model that does that leaning like a motorcycle?
So Robert, the question is about how the front leans. In some of the images we've seen, some of the vehicles have the tilting of the front wheels, but in other ones we don't. Are they the different models, the FUV?
So the one that you see for the, I assume that you're referring to, find it here.
Yeah. I think
This one here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is a company that they acquired. So there's a company called Tilting Motorworks, again, based out of Oregon, that actually makes conversion kits for regular motorcycles that turns them into cantilever bikes. This was something that, you know, they actually added as an Easter egg into here. So if you see this magical beast, you know, that right looks a lot like somebody you may or may not know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. In fact, that looks a lot like somebody you may or may not be talking to right now. But this is their demonstrator vehicle. This is actually the next prototype that they have coming out. So they acquired Tilting Motorworks very quietly. They took a Suzuki GSXR chassis, integrated the tilting chassis system, and built it onto one. This is actually going to be the next version that they come out with. I cannot give you any specifications about it, but I will tell you it was hella fun to drive. So
I can imagine. I've seen over in Europe the small, all I can think of is term them like a Vespa type scooter that had the tilting pair of wheels in the front. A much smaller, lower speed vehicle, but I've seen those in Europe a while back.
So I'll tell you at about that point there, that vehicle may or may not have been doing about 110.
Wow.
And as the more and more you cant over, especially with that tilting front end, that was probably about lap 20, maybe lap 30, and I was just finally getting comfortable at that point. You could really get some good fun out of it. So
Yeah, I think that way of tilting the front is definitely the way to go. I look forward to the next FUV vehicle that includes that.
yeah, so look for that in about the next 2 years or so. But I'm trying to stop it on this clip here. So this was actually added. You can see here on the far left, this is the Archimoto FUV on the far left. This is the Roadster, which is coming out now. And then this is kind of this is the demo version that they took from Tilting Motorworks, and because they didn't want the prototype on the track. But this is the kind of what's coming next. So this is the 3 that will be the bread and butter for Archimoto coming soon.
Very good, very good. Yeah.
And I will say they had an Aptera there, and I got to drive an Aptera at the same time, and I will gladly take a FUV over an Aptera.
Ah, interesting. How did they manage to get an Aptera there? Because that's a different company, right?
It is a different company. They have relations that they were able to get it to do the track testing with. They happen to have the track, and they were like, "Hey, would you guys like to partake in this?" And they said, "Yes." Is it going to be open to public? And they're like, "Well, not the portion you're going to be in." So the Aptera was there for just a little bit, and then it left. So.
Okay, that's understandable. Yeah. This is great to see. Glad that you could join us remotely. After I started talking, I also saw that Jason joined us remotely.
Yep, I'm here too.
There you are. Okay. I wasn't looking at the current participants list, so I was trying to determine if you were still here. Well, thanks, Robert. That is great to hear about your fun with these vehicles. So I guess you pronounce it. I've always been reading the letters FUV, but I guess you've been calling it the FUV.
Yeah. So the official nomenclature for it is the FUV. You can call it the FUV, but it's the FUV. So.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Yeah. And seeing that NASDAQ symbol, that makes me think of the company that has the symbol LUV, love. That's Southwest Airlines.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Well, thanks, Robert. Appreciate that. Jason, while you're here, can you tell us just a little bit about your experience with the ID4 from Volkswagen?
Yeah. So I mentioned this to Emma. Thought you guys might find it interesting. We took our ID4 on a camping trip last weekend over to Lake Georgetown over by Austin, pulling our tent trailer. Let me see, pull up some pictures. And yeah, so it did really well, and Electrify America has been great for us so far. Even with the absurd temperatures we were seeing, like 105, 107 over in Columbus, where we stopped to charge on the way back, it was pulling the full 125 kilowatts, which was pretty awesome. So there's the trailer setup. We had bikes on the roof, and unfortunately, there weren't any pull-through spots at the chargers. So we kind of had to pull alongside and block 2 spots and left 2 open, and we just kind of hung out by the charger to make sure if we had to move, we were available to do that. And then I think the cool part about camping in Texas with an electric car is the fact that the pedestals almost always have a 50 amp and a 30 amp plug, so you can get a full charge really easily. So yeah, and I've got an extension cord that runs back up the side of the trailer, a 50 amp extension cord. And then there's the setup there with the trailer in profile. The bikes on top actually added like another 10 or 15% to the consumption over the top of what the trailer is normally. So probably won't be taking those on any really long trips, because that would really hit the consumption. But for this trip, it wasn't too bad.
And what is the longest trip you've made so far?
This was the longest trip we've made so far with the ID4 with or without towing.
Okay, very good. Because I haven't seen Mike Zutik sign in here today. He's not in the room, but of course he does a lot of research on how much the wind resistance cuts down on the range of a lot of different vehicles. And so I'm sure that if you two haven't talked much yet, we need to get the 2 of you in a room, either physically or electronically, to exchange notes there. Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, I was talking to Emma about how I think it'd probably be better to put, if we wanted to put bikes out there, putting them on a rack on the back of the trailer or something, hide it behind the, in the wind shadow maybe.
Yeah, that'd probably be better than having them on the roof.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And here in the room, we have Don with his experience with his new Mustang Mach-E, along with his son Nathan. You're kind of far away from the mic, but is there anything you can tell the general group about your experience? Use it in every day. All right. That's what I love to hear. Yeah, because great, great. Okay. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, I've heard so many stories of folks that, they've made kind of a standard trip, maybe say to where they have some relatives or something. So they're really well versed with a particular route on interstates and other roads. And then they get an EV and it's just a whole new experience for them. So much more relaxing and so forth, less vibration and all. So, all righty. Well, thanks a lot, Don. Nathan, like I said, great to see you out here. So September 9th, we will have our next meeting here. We'll again do it hybrid. And then later in September, we're going to have the National Drive Electric Week. So that's around the 25th of September, whatever, I'll look at our calendars. And so I'll talk with some members. We'll see what we want to do. For those that aren't familiar, a lot of years we have set up in front of HEAA on I-10 west of the city. And so we'll see if that works out again, or if we want to set up any other additional spots for that. And so we always love it when folks are willing to come spend their time and tell people about their vehicles. And it just gets more and more exciting as we get more makes of vehicles out there. Of course, we always love it when we have homebrew vehicles. And just this afternoon, I was watching a video, and at the end of it, they starred a guy who had done a couple of lawnmower conversions. And then the really interesting thing about this was that he had been given a gasoline riding lawnmower, and he had about an acre of grass, and he did a comparison. He mowed it with his electric, and then he mowed it with this gasoline one. And he said it took about 1 gallon of gas, which is 30 some kilowatt hours. And he said that was in comparison to the 2 kilowatt hours that it took to mow that same amount of grass under the same conditions with his electric. So he was just talking about the efficiency is like 16 times. And so it just really shows you what electric vehicles are bringing to the country and to the world as we get more and more of them out on the market. So it's really good to see those kinds of things, and new factories going up around the country, around the world for the vehicles, for the batteries. So as some of you may see at the end of my announcements, the future is electric. And seeing us go up this S-curve, I mean, we're just really at the exciting part. I mean, I was driving an electric vehicle that I got from a member of this club back in 1994, and it had about a 25-mile range, and it had lead acid batteries. And I calculated how many miles per gallon of deionized water I got because I was constantly putting deionized water into the battery. So it did have a miles per gallon, but not what people would think. And so, yeah, there's been a lot of changes since that time. So thanks a lot, Colin, for all the help with everything, getting going. And Bill, likewise. So we'll see next month if we're in this room or if we're in the room we were in last time, or actually what the folks at TXRX had told me before is that we're going to be in the room on the other side of the lobby here, what they call the computer room. So those are probably the three spots, but I'm glad that the Metro folks could find us. I heard they went in the far door, which then kind of blocked them from getting down here, but eventually they figured that out. And of course, just getting here is something that we all have to learn. Thanks, Emma, for writing up those instructions. I passed them along to Andy and Kim, our speakers, and it really helped them. They said thanks. They knew that they could get here. And so I'm sure I'll be using those instructions for future speakers when we have them in person. And so, yeah, and Don, last month, I know that folks got to see your car in the parking lot. So maybe as people head out from here today, they might also want to,
get to see it. And Jason, we look forward to when their timing works out, that your vehicle gets to come to one of the meetings in person as well. And so any other closing comments or questions? Yeah, Fred.
We left town 3 miles from here or so.
Mhm.
It took us 40 minutes to get there.
Due to,
There was 2 major trains.
Oh.
Blocking 2 major train tracks.
oh,
And the trains were just sitting
uh-oh,
there.
that's kind of the infinite wait. Ah, okay.
But south of Scott Street, it was blocked all the way past Wayside.
Okay, well, we were making comments to each other as we drove in, carpooling to get here today too, about how many railroad tracks we were crossing. And we did see a train also. So as opposed to taking kind of the direct route, and folks might be familiar, there's a bridge over the train tracks just outside of this building. And instead of trying to get across there, we purposely went over the bridge and then made a U-turn to come around on the other side of that train. So yeah, we're all gonna have to learn our techniques. I know that we learned that at our old location, 205 Robert Street, that if you went under the train tracks on Emancipation, you could help avoid some of that. So we'll all have to learn from whatever direction we come, just which way we want to try to avoid train tracks where there are over underpasses. So Robert, yeah.
Yes, this is random time to do this, and maybe just put in the back of our heads, but another member mentioned, like, where do we want to take the club in the next 5 years? It seems like every manufacturer has EVs, so we don't really have to lobby them and where's an EV, where's an EV? A lot of other, like a lot of municipalities are doing with electric vehicles, school buses, districts with electric buses, so do we have to be, I know this is more like plug-in America, the advocacy thing. Do we want to be some advocacy? Do we want to just be education, like EV evangelism, EV evangelism?
Right.
So this is something in the back of our heads, and maybe we can think about that next meeting. Maybe we can shoot out emails at me. Where do you want to be in the next 5 years?
Right. No, that's a good point. That's something that we should all think about. And so I don't forget again, I think there's a sign-in sheet going around somewhere. Okay, right there. Yeah, if folks haven't happened to have seen it, different timing for people coming in and so forth, 'cause I know one young lady left already. Please sign in. It just is good info to have. And
Infrastructure, expand the infrastructure, and the EVs will come.
yeah, okay. Any other questions or comments? All righty. And yeah, thanks for folks online. Mo, I hope everything's going fine with your growing family there and growing child. And there is Mo. All right, a thumbs up for, okay, good, good. That's a good short report. I like that. Yeah, so yeah, our treasurer is good at making good short reports, and everything is good with him, I know, because things haven't changed. So that's a good thing. So we'll see if we're going to want to maybe print up some materials. There is an opportunity on September 22nd. Colin and I have been talking. So our club has been asked to have a rep at the Total Energies, which is a company that used to be called Total Energies Safety and Sustainability Day. And so we don't need a large number of people, but if there are folks interested, it's an all-day commitment. They want people to come in the morning and stay all day. And I think they provide a lunch or something. And then it continues all afternoon. And there's a small chance that we'll get to put a vehicle in their lobby. I think their building is on Louisiana downtown. And so that's exciting, coming up on the 22nd of September. I can talk more about that on the 9th of September too. But that's something our club has been asked to send a couple of reps to. And so there's all kinds of exciting stuff. So any other last comments? Bill, yeah. Oh, yeah. So if anybody hasn't seen it, this is a fantastic facility. There's lots of capabilities. Yeah, John. Asking doesn't hurt. I think it's really exciting. I was really jazzed when I got a chance to see it when they did it. I mean, their lawyers may have gotten to them or something, who knows? But if it is possible, to take some well-behaved guests up there or something like that, it's impressive just due to its size. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see, and we'll see how that goes. Endu, it's around the 25th of September. I can't remember if that's the first weekend or last weekend, but you can look online. It's the national week that includes the weekend before and after, and it's going to depend on people's availability and things like that as far as what we want to set up. But it's just, there's nothing like getting the enthusiasm of our members out involved with the public in the same way that we did with Earth Day. Appreciate everybody that brought their vehicles out there and everything, and it was really fun. And then I wouldn't say as a result of that, but part of what we did on Earth Day, as far as having cars out there, we had the national organization decide to do a spotlight on our chapter. So if you go to the electricauto.org website, which is our national organization's website, you will find a spotlight on the Houston chapter and talk about some of the things that we do. Some of our members doing conversions of lawnmowers and fun stuff. And yeah, and so yeah, if you haven't looked at the electricauto.org site lately, you'll find Houston spotlighted there. And so they've updated some of their things on that website to make it better. People may remember there used to be a paper journal, and they've done away with that, so everything's electronic now. And there also was, for folks who haven't looked recently, there was a vote by the national organization to change the national name from EAA, Electric Auto Association, to EVA, Electric Vehicle Association. So a number of the chapters have been EVA all along. And so that's something that we may want to talk about for our chapter too. There's no hurry in that kind of thing, but the national organization had a vote. There's that rationale as well. Nope, that's true. No, people look up EAA, and I think a lot of times they find the aircraft first. Yeah. And yeah, there's a whole science to how Google does its finding of things when people do searches. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments?
I think it's great. Hey, look at where Metro started and what we heard today. There's so
Right.
Turn the curve. If Metro's got on board, that was like
Ex-
a pyramid, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Now they obviously have seen that that tipping point and where it's going.
Right. And they
Political pressure never hurt,
right. And where the grants are at, I mean, organizations like that follow the money. Yep. So,
yeah. We may have to watch this thing, but they talk another thing to watch with this infrastructure bill from, you know, how much every day. Changes like a pair of underwear, I guess, right now. The latest now that was last night was, capped it if you couldn't make more than $100,000, and they were going to cap the vehicle. It would only apply to vehicles at $40,000 or less. That's the latest piece of news that's floating out there today, and it doesn't mean anything, but that may mean
okay.
people have $100,000 income. Why should they get a tax? Right? Well, they're once they can afford to buy the high-dollar vehicle. And if you try to buy one less than $40,000, go try to find an EV that less than $40,000.
Well, and the car market forever, as long as there's been a car market, new vehicles are purchased by people that can afford new vehicles, and then they become used vehicles, and then the rest of us can buy them. And so, yeah, that's been that way. And so, yeah, obviously.
If we don't fix the grid, it's like having a dirt road and no highway for the interstate system, right?
Yeah.
It don't work.
Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things you talk about fixing the grid, and it was mentioned briefly about in February here, some politicians tried to put a bit of blame on the wind turbines that weren't winterized in Texas. And I spoke with someone at the conference that I was at last week, and that he was from Minnesota, and he was saying, well, actually they learned too. So they winterize, but you can have different levels of winterization of wind turbines. And in Minnesota, with some of the cold spells, they found that some of them weren't winterized sufficiently. And so they've learned from that they're now doing more winterization because they're learning that you get cold spells and it also has to do with the duration. I mean, if you just have like 1 hour of cold, you're not really cold soaking a lot of the components. But when you have 3 days of extreme cold, right.
We lost more generation capacity from the gas field that were working, but got shut down because ERCOT pulled their power.
Right. Yep.
That was,
Yep. Yeah,
that's 25% of the loss.
And it's important to get the news out because otherwise, yeah, some people just stop at the reports of the wind turbines, which, like I said very briefly, was just a small part of it. But I just wanted to make the point about them learning in the northern states about what level you need to winterize them. Yeah.
We have our own system, separate from the rest of the HEAA. We can't get some of the electricity from our neighboring states. We can't. Actually, we have to do Mexico, they were fine. We were in Panhandle, here in Mexico, Oklahoma, they were fine. And the bad thing about that is we can't sell our electricity to our neighboring states either, so it's stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're right. There'll be a lot of technology development and hopefully there'll be some political development too. So, all right, we'll close it right there. So as Bill said, folks want to see around the facility here. You can learn more about what they have in all these rooms behind these doors. And thanks to everybody online. I think we'll close things off right here now then. Let's ask Bill because he brought the chairs in. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. All right.
I made the supercharger.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.